Hattie, do you want to start our time praying for us?
Father, I thank you for this time that we can all get together and honor you, Father. And I pray that formalities, because this is a new setting, would not get in the way of anything that we have to say, Father, or fear of what anyone thinks. And I just pray that we can be open and vulnerable and that you would lead this time. Amen.
Amen. Well, we all should have listened to Judges 13 through 21. Yes. We can begin by just going over some thoughts that you guys have over that, and then even some stuff maybe y'all discussed yesterday morning. I would love to hear just what y'all thought about it, and maybe even what Justin shared in ways, so that we could, share our thoughts on that.
I remember in the Judges recording, he wasn't even, going over most of the things in Judges. He was, going back to Exodus and, a couple other places. Mm-hmm. Just because I guess the individual stories aren't as important as, following the thread of his purpose and things like he was doing. And it was interesting to me how he was, I don't know, going into different places, but they had the same themes. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting, too, a lot that he had mentioned, or he was talking a lot about the law and what it was supposed to produce. And it's kind of interesting what Hattie had prayed about formality and how, I think in some ways people take the law as, a certain formula to something or a certain way of doing something. Well, it is, but, more of, a formulaic. Yeah.
A way.
Yeah.
Right.
But I just thought it was interesting what he was talking about, what the law was meant for, was really to produce a certain way of life rather than just it be, constructed. It's kind of hard for me to explain, but, hopefully you understand what I mean. But I was just kind of encouraged by that. And then it also not just being about the do's and don'ts of the law, but just really producing a certain way of life and how to do things. And obviously, kind of at the end of that recording, he was talking a lot about how there was no king in that time and people were just doing things in their own way. And the law was meant to almost be a, what would you call that, a foundation. And there was not much of that then. They were just, what did he say? He said
They were lawless.
Lawless. So, I don't know. I thought that was pretty interesting in how, even yesterday, we were talking a lot about selflessness in our meeting last night and how to not just want to live our own life. Right. Another thing, too, that spoke to me was what he talked about driving out the 7 nations and how if we don't, that will be a thorn to us if we decide not to drive those out. And it will constantly come back around as a thorn. And I just even wrote the question down, are we driving out these in our own lives? Are we driving out these 7 nations in our own lives? Are we choosing to die to ourselves every day? That really stuck out to me, and just how I'm living my life and how I'm choosing daily to drive out these nations. And I think, too, I need to, kind of go over all of those again, just to kind of remind myself even, what that would look like. Right. I do know, for one, that when we did go over it, which was a few months ago, one of the nations, the Hittites, I think, talked about, having expectations for life. And I feel like I've been really working on that in my own life and having to expect certain things in my own life and, really truly give my life to the Lord and live that out. So.
Yeah, something Justin had said was that we're not only struggling with one of them. Like, each of us doesn't struggle with just one. We're usually always struggling with each of them in different ways, right? And we just don't observe it. But I think, like you're saying, to drive those out, it's really good to just look at yourself and see in what way that's affecting you, right?
Mm-hmm. And other people.
Exactly.
I mean,
yeah.
You know, truly we're, at least I am wanting to get to a place where I'm not constantly thinking even just about how it's going to affect me.
Right.
Because our life affects way more than ourselves.
Exactly.
And that's really how we're supposed to be living, is for each other, but for the Lord. And, but yeah, it is true, because it, you know, in certain ways, if it affects us, it will affect other people. And just having that greater mindset
Yep.
is just a beautiful practice, too. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have much thoughts on the recording itself, but I was just thinking about, like, I was writing down my thoughts on some of the Fruits of Solitude that we were reading, and Justin had used the word meditate on them in solitude, and I have recently been wanting to meditate more, but I've been wanting to meditate on good things, like things that I would want to be more like, or things that I would want to attain. So I was just reflecting on why I didn't feel like I wanted to meditate on things like pride and murmuring and stuff like that. But I realized that when you come to a greater understanding of those things, you can better be able to eliminate them in yourself. So, and recognize them as they come.
Right.
I just thought that connected a little bit to the nations of Canaan. that you mentioned.
Yeah. I thought, too, one thing he said, through the whole time they were in the desert, they were looking forward to getting to the promised land. And one question my dad had said in the recording was, why are we saved? Why are we why are we chosen? And I don't know, that's just like, I feel like, too, like, you can think about, it can be a selfish thought of, like, I'm chosen, oh, this is so good for me, and, like, I'm being saved. Oh, and another thing he said, too, is being saved isn't, like, the end of it either.
Right.
So getting that, like, it's not the end when you're saved, or, like, when you get to the promised land. I just thought that was interesting. I didn't know if you guys had any thoughts about that, too, but...
Yeah, Kim and me had actually kind of talked about that subject, just where you don't stop at the sign, right? Like, she gave me this analogy. Imagine you're driving to a store, and you see the sign, right? You know, of the store. And you're not just going to sit out there and be like, okay, we're here. And you're not going to go in, right? Obviously, you're going to go in, so you don't just stop at one thing and be like, okay, that's it, right?
Yeah. I think it kind of reminds me of that illustration of, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey.
Right.
And, you know, what it means to go through the journey of life and how we're learning. And even the analogy of the train is just so beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, that really stood out to me, and just how we see our life. And it kind of takes me back to expectation, because, like, we feel like if there's certain expectations that get met, that's going to be, like, the best thing in life or whatever, and, like, we feel like our life's fulfilled. But, like, what truly fulfills us?
Right.
And how do we fulfill God's heart? I mean, I think that's a good question to ask ourselves too, just because at least I struggle with wanting to fulfill my own desires and thinking that certain things in life, like even getting married or getting my own place, is going to be so fulfilling. But like anything on this earth doesn't last. And so it's like truly finding out what truly fulfills not this fleshly man, but our spiritual man, and how we're going to continue to grow that man. Which man are we going to choose?
Right.
Kind of thing. So.
Yeah, I've just been thinking about how everything in life is temporary and how sometimes you gotta let go of things that you probably really don't want to, but it's for the best, right? And I think that can even be people sometimes. We can get too what's the word? Caught up. Attached, yeah. To certain things, and then it becomes more important than even what God's doing.
Or at least it's catching our attention and we're thinking about it more than
Right, exactly.
It's the simplicity of that relationship with God. That's just, how do we miss that? Like, I know it's easy to say that, but like, it's just crazy to me how we've gotten to a place where we're so self-consumed. And I'm talking about myself, really. But just how beautiful it is. Like, just think about any relationship you have and having that with the Lord. Like, I mean, that's what He wants from us. And it's just so, it's so simple, but it's how, it's about that unseen thing that, like, I don't know. It's, man, we were talking about that last night. My dad was just saying, stepping into the depths. Like, that was an interesting thing to think about. It's like having that faith in that unknown. I don't even know how to put it, but it's just like.
Yeah, just kind of going without thinking, I guess. Like, don't think about it too much, but. Okay, like have a different trust and faith, like you're saying, in what's ahead of you and not worrying about it.
I think, too, it's like everything's already, like, planned out for us.
It's crazy.
And we don't have to worry about things. And I think that's, like, with worrying, like, I worry a lot about my future, too. And it's just about, like, the Lord has everything in His hands, and just really trusting in Him with everything, and knowing that He has the best for our life, even if that doesn't mean certain expectations are met, or it's honestly not going to look like what we think it's going to look like. But it's just trusting that the Lord has it all planned out, and that's what we should want is to be in His purpose and to be doing His will, not our own ways. And so that's what should fulfill us.
It's funny that even though we know that His plan is perfect, and we say that, we still go and do our own thing, right? Just how can we turn away from selfish ways?
Yeah, one other thing that I've been thinking about a lot is how we separate ourselves from the Lord, and how that is kind of how the enemy is able to deceive us, and how we're independent from Him. He's always with us. We have to choose to be near Him as well. And for me, that's a heart posture, because I have noticed when I really, reflect, when I started wanting the Lord, I started wanting to remember Him in everything, because you just, when you're going about life, you can forget Him in moments. It's not like you forget that He exists, but like He's out of your mind. You're not thinking of Him. And I just think that separation in your mindset is really dangerous, and that's how we get all these spirits like the nations of Canaan, and I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, just like going through your everyday life with just like things on your mind, like what am I gonna spend my time doing today? But like even a thought like that, and you don't think of spending time with him, like that seems like very wrong. But then I do it like a lot, and it's really sad because then I'll consider one day that I don't like specifically set apart time to be with him, and then it'll motivate me, and then I'll forget again. So it's really hard.
I think this has been said a few times, even in one of our meetings before, but just like kind of like what you're saying about like maybe even forgetting. But I think a really good practice each day and each night, which I really still want to practice myself, and I haven't been doing too well with it, is waking up and going to sleep thinking of him, or just even giving him your day.
Yeah.
Right.
And Kim has told me multiple times just how much that's changed her day by just literally just waking up and just giving your day to him and asking him, Lord, what do you have for me in this day? And I don't know, in ways you have to be careful with how you go about that, because I think it could kind of become like this religious
Familiar,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah, and familiar thing.
Yep.
Like, just be with the Lord. I mean, like, make that just a beautiful relationship with you and him, and live your day with him. And, yeah, I really want to begin to practice that more and more, because he's always with us.
Always.
Question is, are we always thinking of him? Are we, yeah, so.
I thought about it like being aware of his presence.
Yeah.
And I have been able to open up my day to him recently, but I feel like I'm still missing a lot because I'm most of the time still in my own little box when I'm praying to him, and I'm learning to kind of more pray for the community or for his work than just for, Lord, help me to love with your love today. That's not bad. I still want that to be my prayer, but to also heighten my perspective and be praying for bigger things.
Yeah. It's again, yeah, like you're saying, it's like, it's, I don't know, looking at life bigger than ourselves. And I really struggle with that a lot, to where it's just like, not here and more outward. I just think that is just such a, I don't know how it's said, like sun consciousness is to really look at the bigger picture
And that's
of life.
interesting that you just said sun consciousness, because I was just thinking about discouragement, and that's kind of like the opposite of sun consciousness, sin consciousness. And I was thinking about how discouragement can be avoided. From my experience with discouragement, you get it when you're focusing too much on yourself as well sometimes.
Exactly.
But when you are looking outwards, you can't, well, unless you compare with yourself. But I think that sun consciousness can be achieved when you are with other sons.
Exactly. I definitely benefit from that, like what you're saying. Like, a lot of time, I probably expressed this before, but a lot of time when I am in this mode, I just decide to be away from others and try to do the best I can to be away from other people. I think that can be really damaging, especially when you're in a certain way of thinking. And your thoughts can really take you down a negative road. But what you're saying of, like, being with other people and allowing the Lord to just speak through them, hopefully good, influential people, but yeah, just like not just focusing on yourself and worrying about yourself, but truly like giving your life to other people and spending less time thinking about what's going to happen in your life and how's this going to affect me, but truly giving your life to the people, especially that the Lord has put in your life. So,
Yeah, I was just talking to Esther about that last night. Just how yesterday morning I was not doing well and I didn't want to get out of bed and I was really tired. And I was just like stuck, you could say. And I was stuck literally in bed and in the wrong mindset. And I was like, I feel terrible, I don't want to go. But just I got this, is that unction? Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Yeah. To get up and just realize that nothing is about ourselves. It's really not. And yesterday was a wonderful day. And I think it's our perspective and how we really see things. And we can choose to see things in the wrong way. And then it'll affect everybody else too. Like you're saying, looking outside of yourself. So, yeah.
Yep. I've had to many times decide the same thing. Like, it is kind of interesting how it's like on certain days, like Tuesdays,
Right.
and like certain meetings happen where like a lot of that like happens. But like there's been days where I'm just like having to like really shift my mindset, like you're saying. And even the past few Tuesdays, I've just really wanted to take in, you know, that reminder that we got before we start up this year again. It's just like what we're doing here.
Right.
And what the Lord is doing in our people, because it's like you're saying, so much more than ourselves.
Yeah.
And I don't know, just every time I'm driving to Tuesday, I'm just really having that mindset, like, what's the Lord gonna do today? Like, why am I doing this? And yeah, it really starts in here,
Yeah.
and then goes into your actions, and like you're saying, affects other people. So yeah.
But when it does like happen, like when my soul starts acting up right before worship night, it is kind of obvious. It's like, well, I kind of know this isn't like what I really want. Like, I mean, sorry. If I feel like I don't want to go to a certain meeting, that's not really me in a sense. It's
kind of like the fleshly man.
Yeah, it's the one part of you like, it's not.
The soul.
It's not always comfortable. It's not always fun, and I want to go have my own time and do my own thing. But then, like, I'm always just so happy that I went. Like, I don't know. Sometimes we pray, or sometimes we just have a conversation. But it's just always beautiful when the Spirit will lead and work in our people.
Yeah, I remember your mom and even you saying just how spiritually fulfilled you become after a time like that.
feel
And it's just
full,
so
like
yeah,
I've been fed.
it's just so encouraging to hear that, and how what it is to truly feed the other man. And I want to understand that more, because I don't know if that's a feeling or just growth. Like, yeah.
Like a change in appetite, sort of.
I just had a thought. You know, when you eat something that you really like, you just want more of it. You just want to keep eating it. I think that's what kind of happens when you start to feed your soul man or your spirit man. Is when you start to feed your spirit and you know what that tastes like, you want to have more of it.
I want more of that.
Yeah, and then your spirit man gets stronger and is able to conquer that soul man more easily the more you do it. But the same goes the
To
opposite.
the other way. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, even like when you think of feeding yourself like with candy, it tastes good and you want it, but it's not going to stay that way forever. Like eventually it will give you'll get sick from it. And I think that's kind of like what Hattie had written in her poem, kind of like these things. Well, we talk about it a lot too, how the things of this world will only last for a certain amount of time and then it's over and it's gone and you wasted your time and energy on something that wasn't meant to be yours or isn't yours. And I think that's also like what you were saying, Naomi, how he already knows the beginning and ending of our lives and we know he's good, so why can't we just learn to just allow what he has to happen and by trusting him, which is, you think it's like a nice and easy thing, but for some reason it's hard for us.
Yeah, it's hard because, I mean, another man has to die. Dying's not easy.
Yeah.
And so that's what's hard, is that other man grabbing on to life still and still want it hanging on.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's not going to be an easy thing. And it's said many times, life is not going to be easy because we are flesh, and that flesh is going to die. And I think that's why it's so important to which man we're feeding, because we can get so caught up in how easy life feels on this earth, but we should be feeding the other man,
Right.
because like you're saying, again, this man is not going to last. So what are we putting our 444 what are we feeding? That's just the best way to put it.
You know what? Kim had shared something with me. Like, yes, it's the food that tastes good is wonderful, right? But we can also choke on it if we have too much. So, and she put that as in the teachings and stuff that are being shared with us. But we choke on it because we think of it as knowledge, you know? We don't put it into real life and stuff, so we're just like getting so much of it, but it's not really affecting us
Kinda
because
like
of our
cramming it in a
heart
drawer and then it
posture.
doesn't
Right,
fit in.
exactly. Mm-hmm.
Too much at once.
Yes.
Yeah, and the way that like, are you putting it in your mind or are you putting it in your heart?
Right, exactly.
That's a really that's cool that you brought that up, because I think everything has a process
Mm-hmm.
and takes time. I don't like saying time in a way because there is no time with God, but like for us, it's like I think that in a way we do kind of get burdened by time and it taking forever. But like what you're saying is like taking in that food, that good food, in proportion.
Exactly.
And yeah, that's really beautiful too. And just like what you said about knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know, yeah. It kind of reminded me of that, the picture of a young one eating baby food,
Mhm.
and then as you get older, it's like it depends on kind of your maturity.
It changes.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
yeah, the food kind of changes as you mature, in your spiritual growth. Kind of thinking of the food in that way as well. So
Yeah, the way that Kim had put what I just shared was meat,
Hmm.
right? And babies can't eat that,
Yeah.
right, when they're born. So putting it in a different sense is that we're still babies choking on a bunch of knowledge that we're receiving that we don't understand yet, right?
yeah.
But I don't know if that's true or not. Which also reminds me of what Tim was sharing in the meeting last night, that we are still babies, you know.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how, and so, I think some of us are in different levels of maturity,
right.
but how the Lord works through that in
Mhm.
each person's life, and how He uses each one of us in our different maturities to
Mhm.
help each other grow, I think is a really beautiful thing,
Mm-hmm.
and how a body works,
Right.
a body of people, and yeah, just really, again, trusting who the Lord puts in your life is really
Mhm.
purposeful,
Yeah.
because He knows what He's doing in our growth, and He wants us to grow. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It still amazes me to think about, what the Lord has done in our people and different areas that He's teaching us, like in these meetings and work,
Right.
just how we're learning a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I sometimes I think I kind of forget about our separation.
Yeah.
In certain things and in the world, and I don't know. It's pretty cool to be able to be a different people, and hard, but like just
Right.
that thought just excites me
I agree.
to like be living for the Lord and realize that I don't know.
Our life is not our
Yeah,
own.
especially when, because it means something different to me once I've experienced the contrast of it.
Mm.
Because I'm going back to being separating yourself from the Lord again. But I might have already shared this, but like when I separate myself from the Lord, I can recognize and see nothing good. Like I can only see beauty and goodness when I have the Lord like with me, because I feel like we can get so caught up in our sinful nature without Him, and that soulish nature only wants for itself, and it's not always going to get what it wants. So that will just lead you further and further down. And I just think that with the Lord, you don't need any of that. You don't need anything for yourself when you're orienting your life around Him and His purpose. And if your life is for His purpose and you know His great love for you, then it's all joy, right?
Yeah, it's kind of what I wrote my poems about. Just observing things when I couldn't see the Lord in it. And then later on coming to realize that He is in everything. And we do have to choose to see Him in everything, because we could ignore it and simply take it as just nothing.
Yeah, I like that mindset
Mhm.
of really seeing Him in everything.
Yeah.
Because that changes your perspective quite a bit
Mhm.
in everything that you do in life. So. Anybody have like thoughts about stuff we talked about yesterday? I feel like there's a lot of good stuff yesterday too.
Something that stood out to me was when my dad was asking, is it possible for us to be perfect? And it just led me back to something Tim had said in our Analyx, I think, and I'll have to find it here. But the way that Tim had described how we can be perfect, because he said, yes, we can, obviously, because the pattern we're following is perfect, so therefore we can, by following that, become that way. But something Tim had said was suffering is allowing it to happen, and he said we become perfect through our suffering, and like perfect being complete immature. But I really like the way that suffering means to allow it to happen, to like let it be well with your soul, because I don't know, I just feel like it's a testing from the Lord. Like sometimes He does give us trials to see in the way we respond, or sometimes He'll give us circumstances for us to respond bad to, so He can explain like, this is what I give, you're asking me for this and I'm giving you this, but this is how you're responding. I don't know if I'm making complete sense,
yeah,
but
for sure.
that just
Yeah, I
really
wrote
stuck
that
out
down
to me.
too. Like,
Yeah.
if you will allow it in your life, it's such a big thing. Because, yeah, all the time I don't think that we're fully allowing ourselves to die even and let go.
I think that when something doesn't feel good, we automatically assume it's not from the Lord. But like you're saying, suffering,
It's part of God's love.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It's discipline. He's trying to teach us
Mm-hmm.
and test us, you know?
Emma, what you said about things that don't feel good, we just automatically think that they're not from God.
Right.
It's something that I was thinking about in regards to discouragement
Mm.
as well, because
Yeah.
sometimes we're discouraged because of our circumstances.
Right.
Because if things aren't going well, we might think that the Lord is like punishing us or something.
Mhm.
But this is probably said many times by now. But it's just important when you're in the actual, like when you're in those hard times,
Mhm.
to know that the Lord has purposed that specific moment for a reason.
Yes.
Mhm.
He does everything because of his love, and he knows the reason for everything. Everything is perfectly planned out.
Everything has a purpose.
Right.
Yep. The response and
Mm-hmm.
just our mindset through those times is very important. I've been kind of encouraged because I've found myself being able to catch myself in those times where I'm really struggling to be like, what is the Lord doing here? And it's changed the situation for me. Situations that happen.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I definitely go about them differently than I used to. And it's just encouraging to be able to have a new way to think around those times so that we can respond differently. And I think that's just so beneficial for other people. Because once we choose to respond in a different way to life, people are going to see that
Right.
and follow that. And that's part of being a light is
Exactly.
how are we loving each other? How are we responding to each other in times that are pulling at our soul? And, once again, when it starts in us and we begin to change that in ourselves, it's going to really it's going to shine out to other people. And, yeah, I want to continue that. I want to continue to stop myself in my soulless tracks and kind of turn around
I agree.
and face to the Lord because it just really changes how you live your life. So.
It's funny that you guys brought up the subject about the Lord giving you struggles, because me and Nicole were literally talking about it today, like kind of having this exact conversation.
That's great.
But I was just telling her that I've been struggling with something recently that's been like, for some reason I haven't seen it as something that the Lord has given me to overcome until today, and I was thinking about it. So I don't know, it's just encouraging to realize that. And also yesterday I found comfort in the fact knowing that the Lord knows your struggle and he's there with you. I mean, even if he's giving it to you, he still knows that you're struggling with it. And I don't really know what to do with that information, just knowing that he knows is just a comfort to me.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I go in those struggles is I haven't really got to the place yet where I am asking what the Lord is doing, but I'm only really able to, or I have in the past been able to connect with him, just come to him in those struggles. Like, I know, Lord, that you are good and you want me to go through this. So that's just my personal experience.
What's exciting about that is we're turning to him.
Right.
We're actually choosing
Always
to have a
going back.
relationship with him instead of going about it in our own way.
And that's what he wants in the journey,
Mm-hmm.
is
I-
us to do it
yeah.
with him.
I liked what Esther said. It just reminded me of the joy that we can decide to have in those times because the Lord's doing it, but taking joy in that discipline. I think I talked to you about that the other day, about having joy in discipline and just, I don't know. I need to stop saying it now, but just really choosing to have that relationship with the Lord through everything, through the struggles, and being with Him, and just I kind of lost my train of thought
Having
in that, but
trust. right? In those hardships that he's
Right.
gonna bring you out of it.
Yeah. And taking the time with it.
Right.
Because it's for a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
The Lord's doing it. Why aren't we like trying to relate and
Right.
figure that out with him?
Mhm.
And I don't know, I like the way you put that just because again it goes back to our relationship with God
Hmm.
and what he's really trying to teach in us.
Right.
And yeah, it's just beautiful how he uses everything to kind of get our attention in that way. Because sometimes we're way out there and he's got to like get us back.
And Haley, sorry.
No, you're
go ahead.
good.
When you do bring the struggles to the Lord and ask Him, like, why are you doing this? I have noticed when I do that, that it really does become easier. Like, I don't get, like, He doesn't tell me exact words, but I feel better when I bring it to Him. And so that's just an
Think about that in
encouragement
like
to
relationship with other people. Like when you finally like get out something to someone, it's just like that with the Lord. Like you're finally like, it almost isn't like Esther's saying, it's like a release.
Yeah.
It's a trust you have with that person.
Yeah.
Like you know, it's almost like you know what you're saying is safe with that person because they're listening and taking value to it because it's somebody you trust. Sorry, go ahead, Hattie. Good.
Oh, I was just thinking about recently with suffering and like hardship. The things that I've struggled with, I've kind of told myself like, there's no way that can be from God. That's like the most demonic, like the struggles I've had are like, just not. It doesn't seem like they can be from God. But what I realized was that the things that I was struggling with were my responses. Like, there's situations that come up in life, and that can hurt, and that can be a struggle, but I formed my own struggles by responding in the wrong way. Like, depression isn't something you can choose to feel, but sitting in bed all day and doing nothing with your life is. And that's a struggle in and of its own. And so, for as long as I can remember, if I got in a small argument with someone, or like they gave me even a wrong facial expression that seemed slightly off, I would get obliterated by it for no reason. And that's what, you know, I can't remember when, maybe like a week ago, I got in an argument with someone, and I was about to go into my little hole of me, self, I'm just going to sit here and give up, but I had to tell myself when I woke up the next morning, I was like, I don't want to say tell myself because I know that was God, you know. I just like said, get back up. You're not going to waste away. You're going to get back up and keep going with your life, you know. Small situations, it's just like, yeah. Why would you overthink them and like,
Get caught up in them.
yeah.
Yeah, the other day when, I think it was last Wednesday, well, your dad had assigned us to, well, he just, to read the Psalms, right? And just think about them. And that morning I was not doing good. I was just like thinking down on myself a lot. And I thought about going to read those, so I did. And the Lord really came to me through those. And it was exactly what I was struggling with. And I was just so thankful to Him for coming to me in that way, right?
Yeah.
Because I often think that maybe it'll be in some way that I assume, right? Like, just like He'll show me something directly. But I didn't think that He would speak to me through that. I guess I've always had a hard time with the scriptures and understanding it, but He really opened it up to me that time.
That reminds me of what Tim was talking about yesterday.
Which was
He was talking about how the Lord would meet him while he was reading the Bible.
Yeah.
yeah, I really felt similarly, just to where I just really enjoyed it. Like, yeah, I didn't expect that kind of enjoyment and going through the scriptures in that way. and just being able to like think about it in the context of life, because I don't remember who told me this, or well, it's in the Bible too, but like just like what prayer is, and we're obviously learning about it too, but like it being something we're constantly doing, and so I see it as like almost a way of life too, and how we're relating to the Lord, and it was just enjoyable to me to like see that in the scriptures and kind of like see it how I can play that out in my own life, and it was just exciting to be able to see the scriptures in a different way. And I've never really read that much scripture, and so just it's exciting. So
Yeah, we were talking about a little bit in our young adult meeting, like how we came upon the scriptures. And something I had shared is like I always was afraid to read them because my whole life the scriptures were dumbed down to me in like a childish way. And I used the example of like the Garden of Eden, where it was like, oh no, they were told no, and then they had to leave. And it's like, it's really not that way. Like they had to leave. They were walking with the Lord and they had to leave that, which is so much deeper. But just even reading that and coming upon it, I was just praying about it and saying, I don't want it to feel like dumbed down to me. And he was really like, it's not. I'm not going to. I will teach you and I will meet you where you are, because it's not his heart to, like sometimes he has to not dumb it down to us, but explain it in a way we understand. But it's not even, I don't really know where I'm going with this, but it's like he just teaches us in such a different way, like you said, like than you would expect. Like it's a lot more forgiving, if I'm making sense. I felt like I went a little in and out of subject there, but
no, that's actually a beautiful point that you and Em were talking about it not being something we expect,
Right.
because I think it can be. It's not like a formula or anything. It's like it's God's purpose is the same, but His ways are new. Like they don't, to us.
Right.
And like they don't come in the same way every time. Like they don't always come in a dream. They don't always come. I don't know. I just think we expect certain things, and like maybe even think certain things are from the Lord just because they came in the same way they did before. Like it's just really leaning into everything that the Lord does in your life and how it can be new.
Like to expect him without expectation of how he's going to meet you.
Yeah.
it's almost to me a little humorous when, I mean, I don't know if it's supposed to be, but sometimes I'll ask the Lord to help me with something, and then, like, I'll be upset and be like, I'd feel like I don't hear him, or that he can't hear me, and then he'll respond in a different way that I wasn't expecting, and I'd be like, oh, I just had to wait and not be focused on myself, and even just like, that selfish, like, expecting him to fit inside my box on my time, and him being like, oh, nope, I'm just going to come in and do it the exact opposite way, and you have to be like, oh, okay.
Yeah, when I was talking about that God doesn't, I don't want to say God doesn't speak to me, because that's just like, but like, I have a hard time hearing from God. It's kind of taken me looking back and being like, because like, I don't see a lot of improvement in myself, if that makes sense. Like, I haven't been seeing spiritual growth, but what it's taken is me like looking into the past and being like, oh, I don't think that way anymore. Or like, I don't know. That's just like, it's changed so much. That's kind of how God's been, I feel like, speaking to me, is by me just looking on my progress, even because externally it seems like I've kind of like, you know, my spiritual life, it seems like it's like kind of died down, but it's like with my poem, you know, it's now externally I may look like not as joyful or excited of the things of God, but now it's actually more. It's like, I don't know.
My mom was able to explain something. I couldn't re-say what she said, but something she told me a while ago. It's like a person can look a certain way if they're focused on their outer self. So when you're focused on your, I guess you could say, flesh, and you perfect yourself in an outer way, you're going to look good. You're going to be, quote unquote, presentable to other people and look like you have it going on and your life is perfect. But for people who are constantly perfecting the inside, they won't look that way. They won't look perfect. You'll see their flaws, but the way they live their life will be completely different because they're doing an inner work. I don't know if that makes sense. She could probably explain it better than me. But even something, Hattie, you were saying, how God, it doesn't seem like God I'm changing the subject a little bit. But something you said is, I never understood why God would give me certain sufferings, or like you didn't think it is. And something else my mom had told me, and it's not that he doesn't give us all suffering, but he allows it to happen. Like, he's not like, I'm going to do this to you because I want you to test you. Like, he obviously does in some situations, but sometimes he's just allowing the things to happen to you.
Because some of it is from yourself, and some of it is like from the enemy. Like, imagine the story of Job, where the enemy literally asks the Lord if he can. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Pretty insane.
Yeah. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, it can seem unfair.
Mm-hmm.
And like, woe to me, like why me?
Yeah.
It's just kind of going back to this selfish mindset. And again, it's just really desiring to know the Lord's heart in it and through everything, rather than just being, I don't know, it's an interesting way to think, because I struggle with that, like even for other people, like with Kim going through so much pain in her body and other people's circumstances, but just wanting to see that differently and trust in the Lord in that, because it can be so hard to see suffering in this world, I guess. And like, I guess in a way it's truly seeing each other spiritually, because we know we're all gonna die. Like, we know this flesh is not gonna last. So it's like relating to each other in a way of like that spiritual man, I think, will really change how we see each other, even in the flesh, because we know that we're not just the flesh. We are all spiritual beings. So, yeah.
When you said, why me, I've been noticing that I will sometimes think something like that about the good things even. Like, am I worthy of this? And I think that I'm learning to balance not like a false humility of like, I'm not good enough for this to be mine. Like, I don't know if that makes sense, but like learning to be contrite, but not thinking of myself, like not thinking less of myself.
Like what Noah was saying a couple weeks back, where like the talking bad about yourself is actually the most prideful thing.
Yeah, that was really interesting.
Yeah, and I think I read it somewhere, but I couldn't find it in the book again. But is instead of thinking less of yourself, just think of yourself less. I might have said that before, but that's what I'm trying to do, is to just think of myself less, like not focus on myself.
There's like a testimony, I think Niles had even shared in our small group. He was saying something to your point, to try to think of himself less, because he said, I could be intentionally, like, having intentional time. He used, like, a time with Benji as an example. Like, he could be having intentional time with him, but you can still find yourself talking about yourself in that way. Like, I mean, I don't want to, like, say, like, speak for him, but he was just explaining how it could be still, yourself could still get in the way of it.
Yeah, what we were saying is, like, you could be doing things for others, but there's still a selfish desire in it. Kind of. Like, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and something that something else I've been thinking about a lot that keeps getting brought up for me is selfless love, which is really the love that Jesus talks about when he says, my commands are love each other, which I was reading John 15 today, so that's why I brought that up. But to love each other, just the concept of selfless love is something so simple, something that I've thought about a lot before, people have talked about, but it just keeps coming back, and something that's so profound to me that my desire has been to be in that simple, selfless love, to be that servant that's more the true friend that can be a servant to you because of their selfless love. I don't know, but I don't know if that made sense.
No, it did. Yeah, I've been wanting to relearn love for a long time now, and just, knowing that true love is putting herself down and trying to really practice that. It's difficult, but
And something that I have experienced because I've tried to do that in my own strength is that you can get really discouraged. I just keep saying the same things. Well, you can get really discouraged when you try to love, but you're not really, you think you're doing it for the Lord, but you're not really asking the Lord to love through you. So you really have to ask the Lord to be your person. Like, not even your own personality. It's the Lord that's coming through. Because your personality is personality, but it's still part of your flesh. So people can explain someone as part of their personality as being quick-tempered. If that's part of your personality, then you should die to that. Because I when I first heard the term dying to your personality, I thought it was kind of extreme because that's what makes you unique. But it's something that is flawed. So
that's interesting. Because we should be him.
A vessel.
We should be mirroring his ways.
Yeah.
And that's why he created us.
If you think about it, a lot of Paul writes, for us to do or be he's almost giving you a personality. Be compassionate, humble, gentle. Those are traits almost that people could explain as a personality. This is an empathetic person. But
Like a pattern.
yeah.
Well, some things are just directly God-given. He puts those in you.
Yeah.
And other things you will learn. You have to choose to practice it and work on it and think about it. Not just accept the fact, I just get mad easily. Nothing I can do about that. No, you can always improve yourself if you're doing it in the right way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not trying to better your self-image. Whoa, sorry. But better your heart, right?
And the example you're giving as a son of God. Because I was kind of talking to Mom about this a little bit today, is that people who don't want to believe in the Lord is because they've seen other Christians misrepresenting what a son of God is like. So they're I don't want that. That's not who I want to be. But that's just, it's so important who we're representing. What kind of people are we? How do we choose to live our life? And something, just self-reflection, is that I like it when people point out that I'm being kind. It makes me feel yes, I was being kind. That's so great. It makes me feel happy.
Well, validated.
But yeah, it is like what you said, Hannah. But I have to learn that true love doesn't need to be acknowledged. It doesn't need to be seen. It's just an inward heart posture towards that person.
God sees it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but like doesn't have to be seen by other people.
No, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's what me and Hattie wrote those poems on once we chose love.
Yeah.
And it's like love is not needing to be validated for that. It is just needing to be loved and be to love and not need to be loved in return.
Yeah.
And my another conversation I had with my mom, just thinking about these all the time, was she's talking about even how we love our enemy. And it's a really, I feel like that's a phrase that has been dumbed down to me a lot in the past, is like, love your enemies as yourself. But like it really is like you have to be willing to love that person and not need love in return. But not even like love in the way we think of it. It's like I think even just living your life the way the Lord, in the pattern of the Lord, is loving that person. If I'm making sense. I don't feel like I make sense a lot of the time, but I'm hoping you guys are tracking with me.
Yeah, for sure.
And something I thought is interesting about the love your enemy thing is that, like, that's being spoken to people who think of other people as their enemies. Because once you have that true love, nobody's your enemy. Like, the Bible says, as long as it depends on you, be at peace with all men. And the Bible also talks about how, like, by showing kindness to your enemy, you, like, put heaping coals on his head. But, like, it doesn't really matter how the other person treats you once you have that selfless love.
Yeah, that's a cool way to put it. Like, no one is your enemy.
Yeah. That's why whenever I refer to the enemy, I'm referring to, like, the devil.
Same.
Yeah.
Well, because isn't there verses like our enemies are not of flesh and blood, but principalities
Yeah.
and powers? It really is true.
Yeah, and if we think of someone else as our enemy, that might be because of the enemy that's within us going towards them, and same with them to us. Like, we're antagonizing each other.
Well, he's pitting us against each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, but even like the enemy, it's not the person that is your enemy. It's the flesh that's manifesting itself in that person.
Yeah. I guess
So
that's
it's
what
really,
I was trying to get across.
yeah, no, yeah, for sure. I understand what you mean. It's like learning to differentiate the two. Like it's not that person I don't like. It's the flesh that's attaching itself onto them.
It's a spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I struggle with that sometimes because I'll
We all
just
do.
I'll see people on the streets and be like, "Wow, those people are weird."
Yeah.
I know it's terrible, but recently I've just been trying to understand that, like you're saying, it's not them. It's something else at work.
Yeah, and I think there are maybe a few people who are building up their spiritual man without knowing it. But a lot of times when people don't know, like, the difference between their soul and their spirit, and they're not actively trying to feed that spirit man instead of the soul man, their soul is going to be the one that overcomes because that's our natural, like, flesh that wants that. So that's why that makes it easier for me to give grace to people when they're falling short, and even most of the time they don't realize that they're falling short because it's easy to let the soul overcome.
Yeah.
It's really easy.
Yeah, the giving of grace to other people has been something I've been trying to practice as well, and just knowing and seeing them in the best way, rather than just seeing all their faults. And I really think it does change your perspective on other people, and not just pointing out their negativities, but really even pointing out the beautiful things that the Lord is doing in their life. Not only changes their perspective on you, but even your own perspective on people, because then you're not constantly thinking negatively on someone, but practicing a different way of seeing each other.
Yeah.
So,
One thing my parents have told me is to, like, give the other person the benefit of the doubt. So if you don't know something about them, don't assume the worst.
yeah.
You assume it in the best possible light, and so you give them the most grace, no matter what they did, no matter where they were on the scale.
Weren't we talking about that? You were
Yeah.
telling me how at Granny's you'll
Mm-hmm.
see people and just be like,
Mhm.
well, you used to be like, oh wow, these people are in a bad mood. I don't
Yeah.
wanna-" But then you told me that your perspective has changed and you're trying to.
Just see it differently.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good example because I used to really struggle with just like, wow, why did that person respond to me in that way? I'm
Right.
like taking it very selfishly.
Personally.
Like, yeah, like, what if they had a terrible day
Mm-hmm.
and I had no idea about it, and I'm like being all selfish over here while they're struggling, and maybe they weren't. It's just really choosing to see people differently, and
Yeah, Mom likes to. Well, not. She's told me this story before. She says it's kind of funny, but like she went to the grocery store like kind of like just after Penny died, so she was in a really bad mood. But like the person who is the cashier asked her like, "How are you?" And but like they didn't even know, but she just like broke down right in front of him because she had to tell him her dog died.
Yeah.
But,
Terrible.
yeah. But that kind of thing where you just, I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know where I was going with that.
Yeah, I mean, assumption is really dangerous. I really struggle with assuming about people.
Yeah.
And I make assumptions, and I think it's done. I think that's what is really happening.
Me too.
But a lot of time it's not.
Yeah.
And even if I don't know, it's just like, it's not good to assume.
That reminds me of the story Justin was telling when he was talking about being full
Yeah.
of yourself.
Uh-huh.
So I think that could even expose some pride in you, because if that assumption you are so confident in and then it turns out to be the other way, you can get embarrassed. Because I've thought about this before. You can't really be embarrassed if you're humble, because being embarrassed is kind of like being humiliated. So you can only get embarrassed if you already had some pride.
It's just so funny that like everything you guys are talking about is like the same words me and Nicole were saying. I'm just over here like, what?
This is today's conversation.
Yeah.
Well, the
Topics.
Lord really does similar stuff in lives. Like me and him had multiple times where we just were like, "What? The Lord's doing that here too? What?" It's just when we communicate about it and we're like vocal and share it. I think that's why it's so beautiful to like really express those things in like times like Wednesday, because other people are struggling too. It's not just us. And when we actually express that, it's like,
It's encouraging.
It's encouraging because you're like, I'm not alone in this.
Yeah, it helps you to, like, I thought about the word encouraging. You're giving them courage. And that reminds me of that one Wednesday when Tim was encouraging us to take courage. But that, like, and that's interesting because I was talking about discouragement. But that we can give each other courage in that relationship.
In our testimony.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, if anyone else says anything, we can wrap it up. Haley, do you want to close in prayer?
Well, Father, we just thank you for each sister here. I thank you for every conversation that you have planned out in advance. I pray that we would not forget the encouragement that we witness here, that we would remember our brothers and sisters that are also overcoming similar things as we are when we go about life. I pray that Lord, we learn to connect to you in a deeper way, that we would truly learn to commune with you, to have relationship with you as a father to a son. Lord, I pray that we would live out these things, that we would not simply be encouraged to talk about them here, that we would not simply be happy with having moments with you, but that we would live our whole lives as an example of and a picture of Christ, that we would grow into what your Son is like. I pray that we would become pleasing in your eyes. And I thank you for the hearts that we have grown and purified, that we continue to strengthen among each other. I thank you for this night, and I thank you again for each sister, each member in this community, in your people, Lord. I pray that we would broaden our perspective, and that our goals and our eyes would be set towards fulfilling your purpose and being fruitful in the way that you desire of us. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks, ladies.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.